Hello, this is Anna Lowe, and I'm here to take you with me as I scout locations from my book, Fire Maidens Rome. Although I've been to Rome a few times before, I made a special trip to the Eternal City in the course of writing my book, just to make sure I had the details right and to see if I could find any really special locations other than the obvious type things that you think of when you think of Rome, like the Vatican, the Colosseum, and so on. So as usual, I started with the well-known places and branched out from there to look for special details and unique places that I could feature in my book. So of course, Rome brings to mind wolves with the story of Romulus and Remus. And at one point I was kind of thinking of making this a menage book, and I actually haven't published a menage book yet. And I was thinking about it, and finally I changed my mind and decided just to stick to kind of my, let's say, old-fashioned couple as a centerpiece of the book. But as I walked around Rome, of course, the wolf is a symbol that you see everywhere because of the foundation story of how Rome was founded. But I did find a few dragons as well, and that gave me the idea to have a mixed group of shifters. And like I said, I started at the well-known sites, the Trevi Fountain, the Spanish Steps, the Piazza Navona, the Forum with all the Roman ruins, and just wandering. And from there I kind of wandered out over as many back streets as I could to pick up on the details, whatever details I could find. And one thing that I knew about when I headed to Rome was, of course, the Tiber River runs through the middle of Rome. But I didn't know there was a little island, it's called Isola Tiberina, in the middle of the Tiber. And as I walked by, I thought, oh, this is just perfect, because there are these interesting old buildings on that island. It's quite a small island. There's a hospital and there's a basilica, and they kind of really stand out. And it's these old buildings that you can tell have been built and added on, and then a little addition, and then like a new square and a new wing over here. And I thought that would be a perfect place to put my Guardians. And that's how the Guardians headquarters came about, is inspired by the buildings I saw on the Isola Tiberina. Not far from there is also the neighborhood called Trastevere. And that's where we had dinner there. We walked around. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say nightlife in the sense of like clubs and things, but just lots of people out in the evenings, families, kids on like bikes and skateboards, and just a lot of life in the streets. A really interesting neighborhood. And that cemented my idea to give Lena an apartment living there. But the best find of all for me was the Gianicolo Hill. It's, Rome has the 7 hills, and it's one of those hills. And in fact, it's when I booked a hotel, I was looking for kind of a boutique hotel, someplace where we'd have an interesting view and an interesting experience, and it was in the Gianicolo area. And the hotel it was like a big old villa, and they had like a rooftop breakfast area. And looking out, you can see the immediate area. And I saw this neighboring villa, and right away I thought, oh, that would be the perfect place for a dragon living in Rome, right? Because it's got this tower, and it's got this flat area you could take off, you could land, and right behind it is a big park. So I ended up taking a walk from my hotel out to this park. And it's the park of the Villa Doria. So I think it's a 17th century villa that was built out in that area, and the owner had eventually bought up a lot of land and vineyards all around it, and it's now a public park. It's one of the bigger green areas I found in Rome, and that I thought, well, this is a perfect place for a shifter to be out and about, because of course I love setting my stories in places like Rome because they're so exciting and it's so interesting in so many different ways, but out of the practical sense, where does the shifter go to shift and to run about if you're a wolf shifter like Sergio? So that park was really the perfect place. And not only that, but it was the perfect place for the hero and heroine to meet for the first time. So that was another nice little find. As I was plotting the story, of course, I love old structures. I love ancient history, and the Colosseum was high on my mind. And I originally envisioned some kind of final fight of like dragons soaring over the Colosseum, because of course the Colosseum used to have a sand-covered floor, but underneath it were all these kind of like hidden chambers, so that you could hide gladiators down there and wild animals and have them pop up on the floor of the Colosseum through trapdoors and make for a really spectacular fight, or so they believed in those days. But what's happened these days is that floor has given away, so there isn't actually a floor these days in the Colosseum. So you can't have like two wolves in there fighting, because it's just this, you see right down into the basement, so to speak. So I still was kind of thinking about, well, what can I do with the Colosseum? Because I love the Colosseum. But I thought, well, okay, it's in the middle of the city. How practical is that? How can you have a shifter fight without anybody noticing? So I was wondering how to solve this dilemma. And no longer with the book in mind, on a separate day, I wanted to do a trip outside of Rome, because I've been to Rome enough that I feel like I've seen most of the main sites, but I'd never seen the Via Appia. It's like the main road kind of leading in and out of Rome, and the aqueducts, which are right outside the city limits. So we spent a day going out there, and this is just for family fun. We rented bikes, and we saw the aqueducts, and they go for miles and miles, and there's a big park around them, and you could just bike along these spectacular aqueducts. And as I said, it wasn't, my intent wasn't to go there with the story in mind, but I thought, wow, this is the place. It's for our final confrontation. It's out of the way. It's a big green, big open area. We've got a spectacular structure, the 2,000-year-old aqueduct that I could use as to work in the fight with. So that was one of those unexpected things that kind of pops up, and I was really happy to put that in my story. So those are just a few of the places I found that helped me infuse the story with that much more detail, and just make it that much more interesting. Not just the usual places, the first 2 or 3 places you think of when you think of Rome, but I hope a nice mix of the well-known places, those must-see places that you don't want to miss, and something new and interesting that maybe even if you've never been to Rome, you might not be so aware of these places. So who knows, maybe on your next trip or your first trip to Rome, you might look out for some of these places too, or you might even find a place I didn't come across, and you can let me know. So for my next story, who knows? That's it for this episode of On Location with Anna Lowe. And next up, I'd like to invite you to travel to Portugal with me for book 4 in the series, Fire Maidens Portugal. See you soon. Bye-bye.